Hey everyone, Gaijin Goombah here. What?
The hat comes off?
Sometimes when I feel like it.
That's weird.
Anyway, last time we finally got down and dirty with Pokémon Legends, talking about the, legends that made up some of the best narrative of the side quests in that game. Though today, I want to go from the macro to the micro and talk about one particular Pokémon from that game in general that has just had my attention ever since it was announced months and months back. Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine.
And before anyone asks, yes, we are planning on videos on Elden Ring, the Kamigawa Neon Dynasty pack from Magic the Gathering, Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, and Tokyo Wire. There's a lot coming out in a very short time, but if you want good, well-researched videos from us, well, we gotta take our time. What? You knew they were thinking it. I'm just clarifying now so people don't have to ask.
Anyway, I don't think I have to explain anything when it came to the hype of Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine. You all know how much hype there was when this goodest of boys was unveiled to the public. The explosion of the fan art is evidence enough of that, but it certainly didn't stop there because GameStop eventually caught wind of the hype and used it for a distribution event for people picking up Pokémon Legends, offering 20 feather balls and a Hisuian Growlithe. So today, I want to have a close proximity examination of this pupper to see what sort of folklore built this Gen 1 classic doggo's design from the ground up.
But there's kind of a problem with that. I mean, sure, a lot of Pokemon over the decades were designed and developed using a very specific folklore, creature, or concept from Japan and abroad, but these guys? You're looking at 5 different inspirations at least. There really is no one definitive origin behind Pokemon's OG heckin' good pupper.
Yeah, I did give that some thought, but when you look at the celestial creatures that fills the folklore of not just Japan, but Korea, China, and, well, the majority of Asia, there's a lot of hybrids happening here. Dragon turtles, Kirin, Nue, Shachihoko, all of these creatures have massive evolutions that span over centuries, slowly and subtly changing in time. And the celestial creatures that make up the backbone of Growlithe and Arcanine's design are absolutely no exception. So, rather than argue and debate over which individual folklore creature, story, or historical event these two came from, I figured it'd be more interesting to try and find as many cultural inspirations as we could based on their appearance, movesets, and dex entries. Cause, like you said, there's a lot going on with the Kanto and Hisuian variations.
Well, if that's how we're gonna play, let's start off with the first thing that one's senses takes in: appearance. Now, despite the obvious differences, the one thing that Growlithe and Arcanine keep consistent through all their different iterations is their orange fur and black stripes. Seems kinda weird for a dog, right? It's more of a cat thing. What if I told you that it wasn't? No joke, there exists a breed of dog whose fur shares similar orange base and black striped fur known as the Tori Inu, or tiger dog, also known as the Kaiken, one of 6 of Japan's unique breeds that are protected under Nihon Ken Hozonkai. And if you thought fur alone connects this Pokemon with an IRL pup, oh, we're just getting started. Kaiken dogs average a height of about 22 inches at the shoulder, while Growlithe stands at an average 2 feet, or 24 inches. So we also have a size similarity going on here. More than that though, Kaiken and Arcanine specifically share traits of capability. Under Arcanine's dex entries, one of the few consistent things that keep showing up is how agile Arcanine is. And the Kaiken? Well, according to all of my research, this breed is consistently being praised for its agility. Likewise, according to 8 generations of dex entries, the one consistent thing about Growlithe and Arcanine together across the board is that they're brave, friendly, trustworthy, and loyal by nature. Kaiken? They're just about the same. Under temperament descriptions, I've seen nothing but brave, loyal, and intelligent. So if you ever wanted a Pokemon in real life, this is probably as close as you're gonna get.
Well, very true. But while these connections are incredibly solid, they only make up the theoretical, mundane inspirations behind Growlithe and Arcanine. We both know there's far, far more supernatural origins behind these doggos, so let's start with the really esoteric stuff. And it doesn't get any more esoteric than these canines' connections with the Chinese Seizhi, or Kaichi as the Japanese call them. So already I'm sure you're starting to see some stark comparisons between this celestial beast and the Hisuian interpretations of Growlithe and Arcanine. Mainly that horn growing right out of the middle of their heads. Well, oddly enough, this feature was not only the most consistent concept of Seizhi through its centuries of evolution from China to the rest of Asia, but it was also its primary weapon of justice. The origin of the Seizhi dates back to the Han Dynasty, where it acted as a supernatural lie detector under Judge Gao Yao under Emperor Shun. Whether it was a goat, sheep, dragon, or its more modern interpretation, a lion, it was a heavenly creature that could immediately discern lie from truth and guilt from innocence. When convicts were tried, the heavenly lion would point its massive horn at the guilty party, And if that particular party was especially evil, the Zhejiu was known to attack the individual relentlessly, either by piercing them with its mighty head-butting horn or biting them ferociously to death. Now, despite the fact that we all attribute canine traits with Growlithe and Arcanine, I mean, it's in the freaking name, there's certainly a lot of lion traits going on here with this mighty mane in both iterations of the two on top of the horns on their head. And what's more are the fiery traits that these two share. Zhejiu oftentimes in the past have been portrayed as having burning bodies that blaze with a heavenly fire, an attribute that fits very well with Growlithe and Arcanine's fire typing. But this is just appearance. We also have to consider these Pokemon's moveset, which are full of bite attacks like Thunder Fang, Fire Fang, Bite, and Crunch, all attacks mirroring the toothy wrath that the Zhejiu brought on the wicked. But there's more. Arcanine and Growlithe's moveset are also chock full of moves that have it flying full force into their enemies. Raging Fury, Double Edge, Flare Blitz, Outrage, Wild Charge, Giga Impact. These are all moves that, when the Pokemon uses them, are either fixated on continuously using that move, or creates an impact so hard that the attacking Pokemon is hit with recoil. Relentless, restless attacks that mirror the nature of the Zhejiu when it besets the wicked. Lastly, there's Arcanine's use of the Iron Head technique that slams their cranium into enemies. Again, fairly similar to the hostile headbutting actions of the Zhejiu.
Hey, don't forget about Dex entries too. I mean, Pokedex entries straight up confirm that Growlithe and Arcanine are Chinese Pokemon. They also talk about the supernatural majesty, regality, and grace for Arcanine, attributes that would absolutely describe the celestial Zhejiu. In addition, Growlithe is said to fiercely fight against any that would harm their trainer or their allies using bites. Again, a somewhat similar take on the bitey Zhejiu.
But while the Zhejiu seems like a 100% shoo-in as the cultural inspiration behind Growlithe and Arcanine, No, this is just a single step in the evolution of what these two Pokemon are built up from. Koma Inu and Shishi. And good lord, where do I even start with this?
At the beginning, of course, in India. Before Buddhism found its way into China through the Silk Road and then onto Korea, then Japan, the cultural beginnings that would make up the Koma Inu and the Shishi started with the animal that would be called the protectorate of the Buddha, the lion. In fact, within the text of the Lotus Sutra and its opening and closing sutras, Siddhartha Gautama himself was referred to as the Lion of the Shakyas, as originally he was the prince of the Shakya people, or simply the Sage Lion. Not as a label of ferocity of action, but ferocity in his words and the courage and freedom from hardships that his teachings brought.
This was a concept that inevitably made its way to China as Buddhism began to spread, eventually taking on the form of the Shishi, or Guardian Stone Lions, protectors that can be seen guarding great historical buildings all over China. This is also where the concept of the Great Buddhist Lion really began to evolve, as China merged the protectorate lion with divine features similarly seen with its other celestial creatures like the Kirin or the Long. Scales on the body, heavenly wisps making up the creature's mane and fur, exactly like the perfect curled wisps of fur and mane that the Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine have. For centuries, China would pair the two Shishi together, one female with a cub and one male with a ball, both representing the concepts of yin and yang respectively. But curiously, as time went on, the physical appearance of the Shishi became more and more distorted until it began taking on more canine features, thus earning them the incorrect Western name of Foo Dogs, which might also explain why Growlithe and Arcanine in Pokemon are one part lion yet one part dog. But whatever the reason the Shishi went from lion to dog lion, this is where the birth of the separate Shishi and Koma Inu come into play for Japan, and where the most critical details that make up the two different designs of Growlithe and Arcanine appear. During the Nara period of Japan, the country had adopted the coupling of celestial dog lions into its own culture just a few hundred years or so after Buddhism arrived in the country in the 500 ADs. Originally made of wood and originally used within homes, by the Heian period, Japan did what Japan does best and adapted and evolved this Chinese concept of the Shishi and theoretically the Zhejiu into their own unique culture as two completely different entities, the Shishi and the Koma Inu. As Shishi originally were seen throughout China as guardians protecting locations from everything vile and supernatural, the Shishi and the Koma Inu began taking on a similar role of guardians at Shinto shrines. Though unlike the Shishi of China, whose mouths were always open, the Koma Inu had their mouths closed, and the Shishi had theirs open. And if you notice the official art of both the Kanto and Hisuian Growlithe and Arcanine, yeah, the Hisuian variations have their mouths open, and the Kanto iterations have theirs closed. Now, you might think this is a Shinto concept, but despite being Shinto guardians, this concept actually derives from the Buddhist Neo-Heavenly Kings, who in similar fashion are seen guarding the gates of Buddhist temples. They comprise of Agyo and Ungyo, who respectively have their mouths open and closed, symbolizing the sounds of A and verbal symbolisms of all things Alpha and Omega.
A good observation to be sure, but there's a bit of a snag. The Hisuian doggos are supposed to be the open-mouth Shishi, and the Kanto pups are the closed-mouth Koma Inu, right? But it's the Koma Inu that have a single horn on its head, so ideally their mouths should be the opposite, right? And that's actually not the only contradiction either. In earlier instances of these celestial creatures, Koma Inu, the one with the horn, was said to have more wavy hair, while the Shishi had spiraled curly hair like its other Chinese ancestors. In the case of Growlithe and Arcanine, these traits are yet again flipped. The Koma Inu-like Hisuian versions have curly hair, while the Kanto OG variation has more wavy hair.
Well, you're not wrong, but I also understand why it's like this though. See, this isn't even Koma Inu and Shishi's final form. This is. Over time, the two separate animals slowly started to become the same thing. Koma Inu lost its horn, and the two creatures developed the same spiral fur patterns. Nowadays, the only way to really tell the difference between the two is that the Koma Inu have their mouths closed and the Shishis open. And even then, most people just say that both of these are Koma Inu. See, this is why I wanted to look into these Pokemon puppers to try and find every cultural inspiration that I could, rather than trying to find one solitary folklore creature origination. Because there is none. The beast that built the background of these Borkers completely lacked consistency, evolving and changing as the concept of a protectorate lion moved from India to China to Korea and then to Japan. So as time marches on, there will likely be even more inconsistencies. But you know what, that's okay. When it comes to our content, consistency isn't what's important. Rather, it's looking to even the most mainstream media to discover just how much of our world's past cultures affect the present. And when it comes to Growlithe and Arcanine, their history spans back thousands and thousands of years over multiple different countries. But anyway, thanks for watching everyone, and a special thank you patrons for making this video possible. I'm kinda surprised the majority of folks wanted more Pokemon, considering the topical alternatives of Kamigawa releasing and the eternal hype that is Demon Slayer. But hey, I got a big backlog of Pokemon cultural video ideas, so it's not like my nest isn't feathered. And if you want to learn even more about how not just Japan, but the entire world's culture builds the backbone of your favorite games, movies, and anime, be sure to sub up, get notified, and check out the rest of the videos we have on the channel. And be sure not to miss out on our streams every week as we break down culture and gaming live. But until next time everyone, this is Gaijin Goombah, signing out.